Hey guys, Magnus Robert here, bringing you another Dead Walking Dead character video. We've reached episode 350. Crazy. So, because we hit another 50, we are doing a webisode character. Or characters, I should say. Now, we've looked at least one character from every original TV series webisode, aside from Red Machete. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be looking at both David, father to Mandy, and Alyssa, sister to Mandy, who are of course from the Red Machete. David is of course male. He is played by Jose Rossetti. He is late 30s to early 40s and first appeared in Behind Us, which is part 1 of Red Machete. Alyssa is of course female. She's played by Sophia Esmali. She is 10 to 12 and also first appeared in Behind Us. Before the outbreak, David met a woman and had 2 daughters with her. First was Mandy and then Alyssa. It's unsure what he did for a living or what happened to his wife and Alyssa's mother, but Alyssa likely went to middle school, of course. When the outbreak began, though, the trio was surviving in a farmhouse. This may have been David's family farmhouse, so maybe he was a farmer, or it could have just been something they came across. Who knows? At some point before the web episode, both David and Alyssa took refuge alongside Mandy in a hardware store, along with a young man, likely collecting supplies for themselves. However, some walkers managed to make their way in. Dun dun dun. In Red Machete, Alyssa and David rush over after hearing a scream to see the young man being devoured by a walker and Mandy watching him. David uses his distraction to leave the hardware store, grabbing the red machete that the young men tried to kill the walker with. They leave the hardware store and David uses the machete to kill a walker, splitting its head in 2. Nice. Alyssa is cradled by Mandy as he does. David then checks his bag as Alyssa looks around their surroundings, concerned. As David looks through his supplies, he looks to the red machete and decides to give it to his daughter Mandy, so she is able to protect herself. As Mandy holds it, her sister Alyssa looks a little bewildered. They return home and some days pass. We see on one of these days, Alyssa listens to music as David helps Mandy practice with the machete. Over the coming days, David notices the food deplete further and further and further, each day taking another can. He also watches Mandy over these days as she practices further and further with the machete, helping her to practice too. Alyssa seemingly continues to just listen to music and chill. One day, David heads to the cupboards and notices they're out of food. He sits at the dinner table with both Alyssa and Mandy with the last of their scraps, and he of course decides they must now go on a supply run. The supply run, though, clearly goes south. As both David and Alyssa, along with Mandy, are caught off guard by the dead, David rushes out of there with Mandy holding Alyssa right behind him. A walker gets in their path, so David kicks it over with force and continues to run. But as Mandy and Alyssa follow behind, a lurking walker pops out and grabs Alyssa by her long hair, pulling her back. She screams out in pain as more walkers surround her, and this happens to Alyssa. Devoured by walkers. It can be assumed that she was put down as seemingly later she's buried at her home, although it could just be a ceremonial grave, but I'm going to assume that they recovered her body and buried her. R.I.P. Alyssa. Some time passes and David cuts his other daughter's hair using the machete. Eventually, David carves Alyssa's name into a stone where she may or may not have been buried, and he of course puts it at her grave, marking it. One day, David and Mandy go fishing, David catching a juicy fish. He teaches her how to gut the fish and then the two chow down on it. He continues to supervise her as she gets really good with the machete, kissing her on the head when she truly has got pretty great with it. After this, a proud David carves his daughter's name into the handle of the machete and gleefully hands it to her. Some more time passes and David catches a walker with a net, hoping to use the dead thing as a sort of proto-alarm system for his family farm. He ties the walker to the porch, the thing connected to this bell, whilst he instructs Mandy to make some tins on string. He goes to adjust the ropes on the walker as it tries to get free, and sadly the ropes just were not quite tight enough, as the walker was able to lunge forward ever so slightly and take a bite out of David's arm. He screams in pain and sits on the porch defeated as Mandy rushes over to him. He then reveals his bite to her. Off screen, Mandy likely was forced to put down David probably with her machete, and he of course was buried alongside Alyssa. R.I.P. David. Eventually, the red machete is left at both of their graves, stuck in the ground. Of course, Mandy was the one who did it. That is, until some rude bastard comes and nicks it. Either way, R.I.P. to both David and Alyssa. I really love the Red Machete web episode. It's such a cool concept to follow a weapons journey instead of a survivor's, but we still get like a really interesting and tragic story here. Also, without any dialogue too. I mean, it's crazy impressive. Alyssa's death is horrifying and David's is just as sad, but David taught everything he could to Mandy, so she was able to survive, and she did, of course. Mandy seemingly became a pretty capable survivor, so his death was not in vain. Tell me your thoughts on David and Alyssa. Yes, David does die in a very silly way, but oh well, these things happen. And yeah, let's spin that wheel to see who we have next week. Next profile is gonna be, let's see, who can we have? Who will we have? Ooh. Yeah, Hero, Miles, and their friends.